everyone.
Well, it's good to see everybody again. It's been a while since we've had a meeting. Our first order of business, obviously, is our minutes. And that's all the way back from March the 10th. That's a long time ago. Melissa, anything to add or?
I have nothing. I'm fine with the minutes as they are.
Okay, I didn't see anything either, so they are passed and acceptable. First item then on our business after that will be the review of a couple of policies that have some changes. First is DIG, the capitalization program. There were a couple of changes in blue, some updatings of amounts of money and useful life, clarification about vehicles. Did anyone see anything that jumped out at them that needed additional comment or?
Mrs. Fisher?
Yes, ma'am.
I just received a text from Mr. Stauffer. He's waiting to be hooked up by tech. Apparently there was a request put in yesterday, but it must have fallen through the cracks. So he's waiting to get connected. So just wanted to let you know that.
He might not have recognized it because when I came in, I noticed it was different than what we're used to.
I don't know, but I just wanted to make you aware of that text.
Okay. In the meantime.
Back to DIG.
Yes, ma'am.
I had one typo that I found under section 3 policy statement. Number 2, IT apostrophe S should be ITS. That's one.
That's
And then this is just a question. In that same section, B, at the end of the second line, it says, if they meet the following criteria. And then there are 4 things that follow after that. So I'm unclear in knowing, is it that they meet all 4 of those things or any one of those things?
It would be all 4.
All 4?
Yes.
So could we maybe insert the word all there? Meet all the following criteria? But if you think it's clear as it is, I'm good with that. It was just unclear to me.
Well, if you've got a question about it, somebody else might too. So I don't think adding the word all would be a problem.
We can certainly do that.
Okay, thank you.
I might add that this was also discussed with the Finance Committee last month before it came to you.
Okay. Stan, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm in now. They finally got me a machine. We put the request in yesterday, but apparently it didn't get to the right drop or something.
Do you recall any changes or corrections or questions about file DIG? That was the capitalization. Okay, then I think we're probably good with that one. These 2 little changes was all adding all and getting rid of an apostrophe. Will that go on the next board meeting then?
I can ask Dr. Pugh and Karen if there is room on the agenda for September 1st or next Tuesday to add this on there.
Okay. Then on to non-discrimination. And this is this a new policy or just what did they put? Did you put it into format? Is that why there's so much blue?
Yes, that's why. It's when you look back at the discrimination policy, it's really it says non-discrimination statement. So this policy hasn't been updated at least since 2010. So just to give you a little bit of background as to how we got to this, I think it was a month or two ago, we had to sign, Mrs. Williams and Dr. Michael had to sign a non-discrimination statement for, I think it may have been for a grant or some contract that we entered into. And when I looked at it, I realized that there were a few things that have been implemented through Maryland law that weren't included in the non-discrimination statement. And that was marital status and gender identity. And I did notice in the draft that we provided to you, I think it says gender identify, but it's actually gender identity.
Yeah.
So I started thinking about we probably need to add those to that. And then when Title IX, when they made the new regulations for Title IX, and they started talking about sexual harassment and sexual discrimination, and so we decided we realized at that point that we had to actually exclude that from certain things about reporting, because it all has to go to a Title IX coordinator. So that's paragraph 4 that we added. And then we decided that we would go ahead and make it look like all our other policies. So because the current policy right now just says non-discrimination statement. So we decided to add a purpose, background, some definitions. So that's why there's a lot of blue. So you're exactly right, Mrs. Fisher. That's why we did that. We wanted to go ahead and make it look like the rest of our policies.
Right. We still have quite a few policies that need to be put in this format, but we'll get to them eventually.
That's right. Well, we'll get to them as we see them or as we need to, or as we have time to address them. I think when we go through and look through, I think what we're going to start to do at the end of this meeting is start looking through our policies through an equity lens. That we're going to have to be revising policies. So as we go through, if it's okay with this committee, I think what we will attempt to do is to come up with a format that's similar to the other policies that we have.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Okay, does anyone have any questions about this particular policy? Any typos, anything at all? Melissa?
First, I'd like to thank Mr. Martirano for explaining, because I had circled excluding sex, wondering why we were excluding sex and why we had to separate that. So your explanation makes me able to check all that off my list.
Okay.
So the only other thing that I have is for your consideration is under definitions. In the definition for discrimination, where it says while on Board of Education property, would it be better to put WCPS property there, or is Board of Education property what we want?
Yeah, I mean, technically, it's owned by the Board of Education, but I mean, either way, it would be fine. If you feel more comfortable with WCPS, that's.
If it says WCPS, it suggests to me it's just on that 44 acres.
Right, that's what right, but all the other property is owned by the Board of Education of Washington County.
And
Right,
I
that's
just
why
wanted
the
to
state Board of
note
Ed.
other policies that we do refer to property as Board of Education property because it is owned by the Board of Education. So I did make it consistent with our other policies.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate the explanation.
Right.
You learn
Anything else?
something new every day. So thank you for being my teachers.
Dan?
Yeah, in Roman numeral 3 definitions, it says the definition of discrimination, any act or admission due to an individual's status or perceived status. What does that mean, perceived status? Just so, I think I know what it means, but what do you say it is, John?
I think if you're actually in the class, but a perceived status is, I'm discriminating you because I perceive that you fit into one of these classes. So, let's say I want to discriminate you, or I perceive that you have a certain marital status, and I'm going to discriminate against you, and it turns out not to be. I still can't do that. I mean, I still can't base my decisions or how I operate based on a perceived notion if it falls under one of these protected classes. So, I don't know where that would ever come up really, except I guess if if I perceive something about you, or I think something about you, I shouldn't use the word perceived. If I think something about you or anyone else, and I discriminate you based on that, and it turns out not to be, I still can't do that. So
That
I think
typically
it's just
shows up with gender identity and expression in that class, that people have a perception about someone's gender identity or the way or expression.
right. That's yeah. Thank you, Allison. That's a better example. I was trying to think of one, and I should just let you answer. So I appreciate that.
No, you're good.
And would you explain too, because I was getting set up here and I heard part of it, because I had also circled excluding sex. So would you?
Because, right, under Title IX, I don't know if you've heard about the new Title IX regulations, and that sort of, we'll get into that a little bit in the next policy, but the federal government issued new Title IX regulations, and it has to do with sexual harassment. And part of sexual harassment under Title IX has to do with sexual discrimination as well. So, but if you read down through there, it talks about if an employee or if a student feels that they have been discriminated against, there's ways that they need to report that. So, but under Title IX, it has to be reported to a Title IX coordinator, which in our case is our HR director. And then there's a whole set of new procedures, grievance procedures that have to be followed if there's a Title IX sexual harassment claim. So under number 3, we excluded sex because if a student feels they've been discriminated based on any of the other protected classes, they would contact their principal and it will work through the process. If they feel like they've been discriminated on the basis of sex, they will report it to the Title IX coordinator. So when we say excluding sex, that just means you need to report it to somebody different.
Okay.
Now keep in mind, if it goes to the principal will know that it needs to go to the Title IX coordinator. So it's only excluded because it's supposed to be reported somewhere else under the new federal regs.
Well, quite frankly, I haven't kept up with Title IX since 2012 when I gave up being the athletic director. That's the last time I read or dealt with Title IX in any respect.
Well, I can tell you that, I'm sorry, Mrs. Fisher, you were getting ready to say something.
I was just say, since 2 people had a problem with excluding sex, would it help if we made it excluding sex discrimination?
And that's probably right. I like that. That's probably a better excluding. Well, except it because we say under the basis of one of the protected classes listed in paragraph 1 above, excluding sex. So I think if you put sex discrimination, I don't know. I'd probably recommend leaving it the same, although I can see why people would have an issue with it, but because it's sex is one of the protected classes. So, and it's not sex. I mean, it's obviously, I guess it seems a little strange having that in there, but I think that's the appropriate way to have it.
Well, why the difference in procedures? Why are we making it difficult why shouldn't there just be one place where you do it?
I agree. And what I was going to say is that these new Title IX regulations, I can tell you every school system and every college in the country is struggling with these. And I know that we've had a number of discussions among attorneys in the state of Maryland trying to figure out what to do with these new regulations. I think it's partly as a result of some of the issues they had in Michigan State and other, Penn State and Michigan State, trying to set up this new grievance procedure on a federal level to deal with this type of sexual harassment. One of the problems that we have, even in the state of Maryland, is, we have other policies and laws relating to bullying and harassment, and there's a real question about how to do both at the same time. If you have somebody files something under Title IX and it doesn't rise to that level, then of course we would just investigate it the way we normally do. If it does rise to the level under Title IX, there's a real question about how to do that. So I agree with you. I don't think it was thought all the way through. It was pushed very quickly to try to get this done. And, most school districts are not anywhere near ready to deal with this. So This is the
passed
first step.
in May, and we have to have it all implemented and policies and everything by August 14th. So, and it's the guidance that the federal government issued is a little over 2,000 pages. So it's a lot.
Well,
Wow.
maybe we should just eliminate the term excluding sex and write some type of sentence there that
Can we
Okay, Dave,
add
that was,
parentheses to something after excluding sex, just see number 4 below?
something
Right.
there, yeah, because that's going to be confusing to people read this and haven't had the discussions that we've had. I don't have a suggestion for it, but we got to do something.
Right. Yeah, maybe we could put something like, with the exception of, or if you believe you were discriminated against on the basis of sex, please see number 4 below. I think that's what Jamie just said. Something
Yeah.
along those lines.
Yeah, something
Probably.
rather than excluding sex, you know.
Right. Yep, I can see. I know we're all struggling with that. So
If that's the only change we're gonna make, then I think this one will be okay, because I think we all three agree that that suggestion would make it better. This is another one we might want to consider then for next Tuesday. It's not next Tuesday, Tuesday after that. Next Tuesday, isn't it? Meeting.
yeah, the 1st, September 1st.
Yeah.
That has to be a rarity where this committee has agreed on a repurposed policy written by staff and proposed by staff with just those few changes. Jeez. Anyhow,
That's not a bad thing.
well, that's
No.
that's not a bad. You have to slowly get back into it, right?
All right, shall we move along then?
Okay.
The third policy, GBAA, sexual harassment, school system employees.
Right. So this is the start. I was going to tell you that there may be other policies. I mentioned the bullying, harassment, and relating to students. We may have to. I think we need to look at that policy too, relating to Title IX. But right now, again, this has to do with Title IX. That's what raised the issue with us, and the whole reporting aspects of Title IX. So that's why we made the changes. You say we did add a purpose. We did revise the background just a little bit. In the number 3 under definitions, number 1 is the definition that we had in the policy. That's the current policy right now. And that is pretty much right out of Title VII, because that's where employment or harassment relating to employees has always been under Title VII. And then, as you say, we added or as defined under Title IX, because that's a different definition under Title IX. And what they do is they talk about it being a more narrow definition, because if you look at A, B, and C, but B is the one, it has to be conduct so severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive. And under Title VII, it's more of an or than rather an and. So Title IX has a narrower definition. And if you get into that Title IX, then there's a whole set of grievance procedures that has to be followed. And that will probably follow up in a regulation after this policy is adopted. It also comes with, just so you know, training. I mean, hours and hours of training for different staff members. You have the Title IX coordinator, you have an investigator, and then you have a decision maker, which is different than the investigator. So I think we've identified them, Jamie, but I think we are trying to identify who will be investigators, who will be decision makers. So there's a whole big process to this. And again, and everybody has to be trained, and that training has to be posted on your website. So it's one of these federal things that everybody thought was a great idea, and maybe ultimately it will be, but how it works and how we're going to implement it is still being worked out. So what you see in front of you is we wanted to add the Title IX definition, and then we wanted to add, if you have a complaint under Title IX, this is where you send it to. So this is sort of the start of the process. Again, there's some other policies that we haven't had a chance to look at, but we're going to need to probably. But this is the start for us. And
I have a question about it in letter C. It's a sexual assault, dating, violence, or stalking. All right, I can see if this is about school system employees and so forth, harassing other school system employees, correct?
correct.
So how does dating violence work into that? I mean,
Well,
so we're assuming that a school system employee dates another school system employee. But, well, I guess my question is, the violence could take place off the job. So would it apply to us? I don't get that.
it would not. It would not. It only applies. School property or during school activities. I had it in front of me, and I thought that question might come up, but so the obligation to investigate complaints only to conduct that occurred in the school's program or activity and not related to unrelated off-campus conduct. So if it occurs off campus or not as part of a school activity, then it wouldn't fall under Title IX. So
Shouldn't that be in there, that explanation that you just said be in the policy so that it's very clear or not? I'm just asking.
It could. It just depends on how much detail we want to go into. What you see in front of you is the definition specifically from Title IX. We could add a sentence or two that similar to what I just said to make that clearer. If it's a very good question, and that's why I had it here highlighted, and then of course I couldn't find it right away, but I did put my hands on it. So maybe we should add. Maybe that would be helpful to add something along those lines. That would maybe answer someone's questions or just put someone at ease that it's not 24 hours a day, no matter where it is. It's only on a school's program or activity or on the school's property.
I mean, whatever others on the committee and those attending this think, I mean, I certainly don't advocate dating violence or anything, but I read that.
I just have a question, John. So under the definition, number 3, such conduct has the purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with an individual's work performance or of creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. When I read that leads me to believe that the part that Stan is talking about, while the dating or the violence may not be taking place on school grounds, if you are engaged in a relationship or have one of those things occur and it's impacting your work, then would that apply here?
I think it doesn't apply under Title IX, but it does apply under our other policies and procedures. So, or it may, I should say, it may. So I think what happens if somebody makes a complaint, the first thing the Title IX coordinator will do is, they'll do some preliminary investigation and they'll determine whether it fits in the definition of Title IX. If it does not, then it wouldn't be handled under Title IX. It would be handled under any other policies and procedures that we have in place. So that first definition is the current definition that we have right now. So if Title IX doesn't apply, then it falls back to that definition and under Title VII. So, but again, how they all work together, we're still trying to figure all that out. So, so both of these wouldn't be at the same time. And that's why we added or as defined under Title IX, because the Title IX definition is different than the other definition.
At that. And that was a comment. Do we want to include the Title IX definition here so that we know that either one or the other is included under this policy, whether it's 7 or 9, that it is covered under this policy, or unless I'm not understanding correctly?
Yeah, if you look at sexual harassment number 1, again, that's what we currently have, and number 2 is under Title IX. So what you see under number 2 is the definition under Title
that's
IX.
the title. Gotcha.
That is the definition. That's why those 3 are listed. And so I only mentioned B, but A, B, and C are the definitions under Title IX.
Gotcha.
You know, I will
There
tell you that.
There is
Go
a
ahead.
colon after Title IX, but you can barely see it.
Mhm.
So maybe it should say as defined under Title IX below instead of a colon.
Okay, we can do that. Yeah, that makes some sense. Maybe that. Yeah, it's hard to see with the blue or whatever color it shows up in the.
Yeah, I
Um,
think when it's black, it'll be better.
In black, it would be better, but
John, let me ask you this, and this may not be appropriate to the discussion of this this policy, but what authority would the school system have to deal with a school board employee who is found guilty of domestic violence or violence off the job, and that person maintaining his or her job with WCPS? That makes sense?
Yeah,
what I'm
that's.
asking?
It does, and in the typical lawyer fashion, I'm going to say it depends, but we would have to look at each individual one. We would investigate it to see if it does have any impact on the job. But there are other policies and procedures that I think it would fall under if they were arrested and those kind of things. So, you know, we try to stay out of those type of things if we can. But the reality of it is that if that kind of situation, we'll probably be right in the middle of it. But we will look at it and see if it affects the job performance, or whether they can perform the job. If they have those type of issues, my guess is that they probably just not limited to that. It's probably something that we have to deal with on a larger basis. So I know I didn't really answer your question, other than the fact that we would look at each one of those individually, like we do everything. But that would be the best we could do at that point.
I would agree.
is there anything else? Mrs. Williams?
Yes. Number 1, under policy statement, I'd like to send to you in chat a suggestion for that. When I read it, you know, there's a large amount of verbiage that's stricken. So when I read that, I think that it could be improved. And so I'd like to send in chat my suggestion for that.
And I'll just say that, and I appreciate that, because I will tell you that Jamie and I looked at this, and I struggled a little bit about what to include and what not to include. And as I said, I think there's another policy, our bullying and harassment policy, that needs to be looked at too, in conjunction with this. So we wanted to get this one to you so we could start to look at it. I would like some opportunity to look at the other policy too, and to make sure that we, that they make sense and they fit together. I mean, my concern was I didn't want to be in a situation where if it didn't fit under Title IX, that we didn't have a policy to fall back on to deal with things that aren't covered by Title IX, but that are things that we believe are inappropriate and should be dealt with. So we went back and forth about taking number 1 out, put number 1 in, and how to do all that. So, and the other thing, I'll throw this out, and I don't want to muddy the waters anymore, but at one point I thought maybe we should just do a new policy, which we don't want to do any new policies if we can help it, but just do a new policy relating to Title IX and not disturb the other policies. But so I throw that out, not to muddy the waters, but just something for you all to think about. Whether it would be to try to keep these policies, this one in our bullying and harassment policy, the same or somewhat the same, and then have a new Title IX policy. So
Mhm.
it's something to think about.
We could do that, but just at the bottom, say, see also, list the opposite policy, just in case somebody wanted to make sure they're under the right one. I did something, when Melissa said chat, I went up here because I've never used chat before. I clicked on chat. I got a whole new page. The only person I can see is Mr. Morano, and I don't know how to get out of that because I thought Melissa was typing something somewhere.
I did type something. May I say something? May I say something, Mrs. Fisher?
Yeah, go right
Okay.
ahead.
First of all, Mr. Martirano, I don't have any issue at all with the content there. I think what was missing was a verb. And so
Okay.
I just kind of reorganized the sentence. And because we are in an open session, I think rather than have that just appear in chat, I'd like to go ahead and read my suggestion. Okay?
Okay.
So what I'm suggesting, pardon?
Can somebody tell me how to get out of this so I can go back to the original screen? If I hit chat again, it doesn't change it.
Do you have something that people show participants? I have a telephone receiver that's in red, and to the left of that, it says show participants. If you click on that, did we come back up?
You mean under more actions, it says that?
It's just a bar that shows at the bottom of my screen.
Yeah, if you move your cursor around the bottom of the screen, that bar should show up.
A bar?
Yeah. There's a video camera, a microphone, a box, 3 dots, a hand, something that looks like a quote box, and then what looks like 2 Weebles or 2 Fisher Price.
I'm not getting any of that.
Right. We know what that means. Mrs. Fisher, do you see? You just see a small box with one person in it?
Yeah, that's all I'm seeing. Right
If you
now,
go into that box, just click on that box. See what happens. Because when I do it, it takes me
There it
back
comes.
to the.
It's coming back slowly.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead,
Mhm.
Melissa.
Okay, thank you.
Thank everybody.
Employee complaints of sexual harassment regarding hiring, promotion, compensation, or new and continued work assignments will be investigated promptly and appropriate action will be taken.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see anything here about sexual complaints of sexual harassments regarding evaluation. Is that implied under one of the other areas that we're looking at, or is it inappropriate, or should we add it?
Seems like it should be added, but
Right now. Yeah, I mean, I guess hiring, promotion, compensation. Yeah, it doesn't say evaluation. It probably. It would
promotion's
probably
kind
be
of.
good.
Other than that, I like that statement.
Well, let's see, you got a good place to add the word?
I don't. But that's only because I haven't given it a lot of thought, Jackie. Allison, where do you
I
think?
would just add it where you say employee complaints of sexual harassment regarding hiring, promotion, compensation, performance evaluation, or new or continued work assignments.
How about my password?
Okay.
All right, I think that's a good place to add it.
And do we have a separate policy as it relates to students and sexual harassment?
We do. And that's,
Okay.
that's the policy that I was talking about that I think we need to look at. And
Yeah.
it's based on state law, because state law requires us to have a policy that talks about bullying and harassment. And so that's one of the questions we've all been facing about how do we satisfy the requirements in the state of Maryland, under the law of the state of Maryland, and satisfy the requirements under Title IX. So that's a policy that we need to look at. I just didn't have time to get to it. So, I think we should look at this one and that one, so we can present them together. Unless people think otherwise, but I think it's something, because Title IX deals with students as well. It's always dealt with students from an athletic standpoint, but it deals with students now. So under Title IX, you can file a complaint if you're a student or an employee. So this is the first one we start looking at with employees, but students is a issue. So Allison, yes, and I think that we need to look at that policy too.
And so I'm thinking this policy is making me think of staff to student sexual harassment. Is that covered under Title IX or the other policy?
It would be, yes, it would.
Just wanted to be sure.
So, right. So,
yeah, I think we need to look at both of them together and present them as a united piece.
Yeah, that was going to be my recommendation, but I started with this one, and Jamie and I worked on this, and so we thought we'll go ahead and get this before the committee and get a chance to start looking at it and get your thoughts, and so we can work on it together.
Does this one have a time attached to it? The one we're looking at right now that has to go forward?
Well, as Jamie mentioned, the implementation date is already passed, but I will tell you that there were 3 different lawsuits across the country asking for an injunction to stop this from being implemented. All 3 the injunctions were not granted, but most school districts across the country have not met this. We did name a quote in quotes a Title IX coordinator, and we did post it on our website, and we've started the process of training and those kind of things. So we're right along the lines with everybody else in the state of Maryland. I will tell you that there was a large, I think because Jamie looked at some Title IX things as well, and there was some large jurisdictions or school districts they have whole departments that have been working on this for 2 or 3 months trying to figure it out. Even the large jurisdictions in Maryland are struggling. I mean, we have a conversation on Friday with all the in-house councils across the state of Maryland to talk about this issue, because nobody really knows how it should be implemented and how it should happen. So, that was a long answer to your question, Mrs. Fisher, but the deadline has passed. Staff has started the process, so everybody's in agreement that as long as we're making good faith effort to satisfy the process, we're at least met the spirit of the regulations. Again, if you look on our website, one of the headers or footers says about Title IX, and if you have a complaint, this is where you should send it to. I did receive an email from HR. They are making arrangements for training, because there's a lot of companies across the country that are offering this training. One of the things that everybody struggles with is these regulations require this training to be posted on your website. So it's hard for a company who does training and then allows you to post it on their website. But there are some reputable companies that are doing that. So we have the process going. So I don't think a few more weeks or however long it takes us to do this is going to be an issue for us. If in the meantime, we receive a complaint under Title IX, we will treat it as like that, because it is federal regulations. We've had some things that we've talked about since August 14th. It turned out not to be a Title IX situation, so we're just handling it under our normal process. I think it's something we should be sensitive to, but I don't think we need to rush to do it in the next week, but in the next 30 to 45 days, it would be nice to figure out exactly what policies we want to do and get them approved.
Sounds like a plan.
John, I can't believe that your fellow lawyers in Washington, D.C. wrote things that their fellow lawyers out in the countryside can't understand. That's unbelievable.
That's right. I can't believe that either. But and as I think Jamie referenced, the guidance documents are 2,000 pages long. So it's just I think it starts out with a good thing, and I think it'll ultimately will be a good thing. But and I will tell you that, like, colleges, secondary, they have even more requirements than K through 12. Like, for example, they have to have a hearing. We don't have to have a hearing. We have a lot of other grievance procedures, but we do not have to have a hearing. But there's a lot of questions and back and forth, and there's a lot of things that are good about it, but they should have given additional time to try to implement it, but they didn't. So
Okay, so we'll hold on to this and then look at the school system student sexual harassment, and maybe then present them like you suggested, both together when they're both done.
Okay.
Next, we have a series of policies that we are going to start looking at with a equity lens. We might have time to get through one of those today. And the first one I have on top here is JC, permission to attend school out of homeschool attendance area. Personally, I didn't see anything in here myself that seemed like it violated equity in any way. I do have one question, but I'll let my other two committee members go first. Melissa, anything? You're muted, Melissa.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I have here, are there regulations for this policy? And it does need to be put in our new format, but 3/4 of the way down the page, under the paragraph that begins should, there are 3 bullets. And number two, the second bullet says child no longer meets out of area criteria. My question is, where is that criteria? How would one know what that criteria is?
Mrs. Williams, I can answer your first question. There is an administrative regulation, and it was last updated in 2016. So that the regulation is at least a little more current than the policy. And I'll pull that up and see if I can answer your second question.
Thank you.
Well, they're looking at that in the next complete sentence under those 3 bullets. It starts nothing in this policy. It's such a transfer will be deemed to be the best interest of the student. Who's going to determine that? Deemed by whom? The principal?
I think the process starts with the principal, I believe, and then I think it can be appealed. But I'm thinking that process starts with the principal. I don't know 100%, but I think Jamie's shaking her head yes. So I think that I think that's when you you fill out the application, and I think the principal makes the first decision on that, I believe.
Okay, so it should be clear in the regulation then, right?
Yeah, the principal makes the decision. If the principal does not grant permission, a parent or guardian can appeal it to the Student Services Department. They have somebody hear it, and if it in the past we've had I don't know if you remember Ellen Hayes. She used to be a principal for us. She does, I don't know if she still does, but she used to hear, after she retired, she used to hear the appeals And then if she would also deny it, then it would get appealed and Dr. Bishop would hear the appeal as well. And then, of course, you know, it can keep going up, but there is an appeal process. And the starting point, though, to submit for the request for permission, special permission, is the principal.
Okay. Out of area criteria? Melissa, questions?
I do not see anything. I could be missing it, reading it quickly here.
When it's reformatted, could that be included under the definition section? That we could
Right.
define what that means exactly out of area criteria?
Yep.
Anything else? Stan, did you say anything? Stan? Did you see anything?
I think he shook his head, I think.
Sorry, I'm muted. I shook my
I
head.
must
I'm
have
sorry.
looked away.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, this does, of course, need to be, if we're going to take the time, put this in the proper format as mentioned. I don't know if you want
Mrs. Fisher,
to, yes, ma'am.
not to throw a monkey wrench into it, but in terms of the equity lens piece, and I just am reviewing this for the first time, so forgive me while I try to figure out where it is now. On the where it says student services may rescind
Can
the
you tell
privilege.
us what paragraph you're in? I'm sorry.
I'm looking at the 1, 2, 3, first, second, third where the bulleted list is.
Oh, okay.
Okay. The Department of Student Services may rescind the privilege if one of the following conditions exists: the child's attendance, behavior, or grades are unsatisfactory. So when we look at this through the equity lens, if a particular group of students might be adversely impacted by the statement, then we have to review it. And so because we have a disproportionate amount of students that are disciplined, students of color who are disciplined and are not achieving, it might be that students would be penalized who need this accommodation, who wouldn't be able to receive it the way it's currently worded. I think that attendance, most of our kids, we don't have as far as I know, we don't have a disproportionate number of students in any group that are not coming to school. So I think that attendance is fine, but I think we need to talk about that idea of if they're not behaving or not making satisfactory grades, that it would be a reason to rescind our offer of placement.
Is this, wait a minute, this is just changing from one school district within Washington County. This isn't coming from outside at all, is it?
No, it is not. This is just about they are out of district, the way I'm reading it.
Like switching from
Right,
Clear-
because
Clear
of some
Spring to
reason,
Williamsport or something.
daycare or whatever, that they need to go to a school outside their residence area.
Melissa?
I remembered to unmute.
Oh,
Could we just strike that first bullet and just take attendance, behavior, and grades out of the consideration?
I think attendance needs to be there simply because first of all, because we don't have any group that is adversely impacted by attendance, and attendance, if attendance becomes an issue because they're attending outside their area, then we need to have kids in school, right? We can't have kids not attending and that the parents are saying, well, I don't have transportation or this or that or the other thing, because I think they have to provide their own. Isn't that correct?
They
Yes.
do.
That is-
Yes.
Right. So I think attendance is an important factor to consider about remaining, like we're doing them a favor by allowing this. And if they can't get their kid to that placement, then we need to talk about how we can, how their needs can best be met. So I think attendance is a consideration that we need to leave in there.
Okay, because the part we're talking about right now is when someone has been granted permission to go to a school outside of their attendance area. And then,
Correct.
so then we're talking about if you're there, what conduct would cause us to return you back to your school, to your home school. You know,
I might suggest quantifying that though, as opposed to leaving it to the subjective discretion of whoever's interpreting the policy.
Right.
okay.
Melissa?
So I have a question regarding magnet programs. These children are attending out of their district. Would that also apply to them? That on the basis of poor attendance, behavior, or grades, they could be denied participation in a magnet program?
I think that because they weren't, I think this is my interpretation, that this is different because it's being solicited by the parent as opposed to a program that's provided by the school district.
But they
So I
also
think-
have to, but parents apply for their children. They're there by application. So I really don't see
Yes,
the
Well,
difference
but
between
it's a
making
program.
application.
It's a program that is provided by the school district, as opposed to this is not a program. This is just a courtesy, if you will, that we allow students to attend outside their attendance area. This is not a program.
Melissa,
Yeah,
if you look at the big paragraph up the top, starts in general. I think that kind of clarifies that this is a courtesy, as Allison said, rather than a program change that has put somebody in a different district.
A
Yeah,
lot
'cause
of
I
times
think-
you see the special permission at the elementary level. A lot of times they're requesting it because of daycare issues. So I think that's the majority of our request for permission to attend out of school, out of homeschool attendance area.
Uh-huh.
And as far as I know, when someone applies for a magnet program or one of those things, they do not go through this process. There's a separate process to apply to be in the magnet program or one of those other programs. And if you're accepted in that program, then that's how you get to that other school. So it's not covered. I don't think it's covered by this policy.
Thank
I mean,
you.
Are we going to keep attendance, behavior, and grades? All three in that?
Well,
I
I
mean, I'm
don't,
fine with it myself, but
don't-
Allison said something about making
I
it more
think that
specific.
behavior and grades should be eliminated.
Oh, eliminated. Stan?
my thought about behavior is the only time that, as Jamie said, most of the time it's kids ask for, or permission is asked for to be outside the attendance area because of childcare and so forth. As far as behavior, the only thing that I've ever had contact with in my years in the school system was the system will decide to say, because I got many of them at Williamsport. Through the years, I got a few kids from South High who were sent to Williamsport because of their behavior at South High, and they were trying to get them, as I was told, this is what I was told, to get them out of the climate and their friends, get them away from the bad influences that they were coming under at South. That's the only thing I've ever known about behavior.
But
So,
these are after they get to the new school district.
yes, I know that. I'm just saying though, I've never in my 42 years had a student who was out of district, in my experience, misbehave. That's all I'm saying.
So then we don't need to have it in here, correct?
Well,
Don't know if we could say that.
I don't know.
If you're following that logic. And so in my 37 years, I can say that I have absolutely seen students that misbehave that were uninvited to continue attending a school because of their behavior. So I do know that it happens. I can't speak to Washington County specifically, but what I can speak to specifically is the disproportionate representation of students of color in disciplinary matters. And if students of color are asking for permission to be at a different school, then they are more likely to be asked to leave under this policy because of behavior. And that is not, we cannot enact policies that we can foresee a potential disenfranchisement of a group. And because of our data at this point, where we have a disproportionate number of students who are either participating in in-school suspension or out-of-school suspensions, that would be exactly what we would be doing if we continue along this line.
Just out of curiosity, what is the breakdown at Antietam Academy of white, Hispanic, student of color, that type of thing? Because you're usually sent. I'm just asking for informational purposes, just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
Well, she's looking that up, Melissa. Go ahead. 'Cause it's just about quarter after.
Looks like she's frozen.
Yeah,
Yes,
she's,
Melissa, you're frozen. I don't know. I guess you can't even hear me, huh?
Well, I think it just goes back to what Allison was saying. I think that one thing we need to think about is, raises the bigger issue about if a student is granted special permission to attend a school outside their attendance area, and then they're at that school, I think we're really talking about, what would that student do that we would want them to go back to their home school? And so I see what Allison's saying, that if you base it on criteria that somehow puts somebody at a disadvantage, that's probably not something that we want to have. However, it is I don't know what the right word is when someone asks for a special permission and we grant it. It really is special permission. And so if they don't meet a certain criteria, they would have to go back to their home school. But I'm not sure how we want to base that.
I don't know if I would take behavior out. I could see, as Allison says, quantifying some of this. Most of the students that were at Williamsport that I had experience with that were out of district were usually the ones, like I said, that were sent from another school because of their behavior or other things, and so forth.
These aren't sent. These are asking permission.
Yes, I know what we're talking.
Mrs. Williams is back.
Here's Melissa back. She's unfrozen.
Yay.
She's back.
The answer to your question based on last year's enrollment, I don't have the breakdown of the student groups, but 41 of the 68 high schoolers were students of color, and 30 of the 44 middle school students were students of color. And I would say most of those were Black and or multiracial, with a smattering of Latinx.
Say those again. High school was what?
41 of 68,
Yeah.
and 30. Middle school was 30 of 44.
Melissa?
Yes. I'm sorry, I missed most of whatever discussion happened. When I raised my hand before I froze, I was going to suggest that we just strike behavior and grades and have that first bullet say, child's attendance is unsatisfactory.
I'll tell you what, it's after 11:15. We seem to have a discussion going here that we're going to have to continue at a later date. Maybe we can think about some wording of this phrase between now and then, and listen to everybody's suggestions and then make a decision. Is that all right with everybody?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because I know some of you have places and things you've got to do. So we will pick back up with JC since we're in the middle of it when we come back. And then Jamie and Ms. Marker, I know you've got some things from the harassment if they're ready to go the next time. But we also have to look at a date. I'm just grabbing my calendar here. What's the 4th? Do we want to wait till the 4th Tuesday or do we want to go before then? 4th Tuesday is not till 28th. Do you think there'll be much movement on the sexual harassment Title IX issue by then?
Actually, Tuesday's the 22nd.
Oh, yeah, because there's
The first
5
is a
weeks.
Tuesday. Yeah, there's 5 Tuesdays.
There's 5 Tuesdays in September, right?
Well, can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear you,
Yes.
Steve.
I will be out of town on the from the 20th to the 25th of September. My son and I are going to kayak and hike in extreme northern New Hampshire,
Okay.
favorite spots.
I only see, oh, you're right, there are 5 Tuesdays. So that's eliminating the 4th week. So we have meetings on the 7th and the 21st, I'm assuming.
1st and 15th.
The 1st and the 15th, right?
First
What?
and the 15th.
Of October.
Oh, you're talking October now?
Oh, sugar, I'm looking at September. Well, do we want to meet again in September? Or do we want to wait till October? Well, that would only leave
Could
29th.
could we meet on the 29th, the 5th Tuesday of September?
Doubt it if they'll have much movement on that Title IX issue though, will you, by then?
I mean, we might. I mean, obviously, it's going to be a long time working on it, but I think we'll have time to look at the other policy, and we can at least bring something back to you at that point, and then we can continue our discussion on JC and anything else we want to talk about.
Well, if the Title IX suits, if the 29th suits, we can just work on these 8 policies. And
I think that would be good.
because I don't think they're going to be ready for any more Title IX stuff. So should we just do that? Work on the equity lens on this set of policies?
I'm good with that.
So what
Okey-doke.
date was that again?
29th
Yep, okay.
September.
Maybe we can set it. Maybe we can set aside a few minutes and Stan can tell us about his trip.
Wait a minute, I'm hearing that I'm not going to be in the area on the 29th, so.
Dave must have just chimed in.
There's somebody from behind you said you're not going to be able to be here.
That was my appointment secretary.
Well, could we meet on a date other than a Tuesday?
I think
Sure.
Say the 16th or something.
Not of September.
Not-
You're looking
not
at October.
September? Why?
The 16th of September?
Yeah, it's a
That's-
Wednesday.
Oh, wait a minute.
I have a May Board of Directors meeting on the 16th of September.
Okay.
I thought there was something on the 16th. I just couldn't remember what it was.
Mrs. Williams, are you just not available on the 29th, or are you not available that whole week?
Just a few days, so I would say probably through Friday.
Through Friday? Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, do we want to go earlier, say the 9th?
What about September 17th? It's a Thursday.
I could do that.
It's all right with me. Stan?
I can do that.
And so this would be primarily to work on the the policies in section J, right?
First out of the
Right.
J policy, right. What about Mr. Marciano? Are you free on the
I-
17th?
I just looked. I'm fine. The 17th works for me.
I'm good on the
Okay.
afternoon, the 17th, not the morning.
I only heard the last part of that. You're free which half?
The
Afternoon.
afternoon.
You're free in the afternoon. Is that still all right with everybody?
That works for me.
1 o'clock?
Okay,
Sounds good.
1 o'clock on the 17th. That's
All righty, 17th.
Mrs. Fisher, do you want me to share policy JC with student services to make sure that, because it hasn't been looked at since 2003, to make sure that it matches current practice?
That would be a very good idea.
Okay.
Thank you for thinking of that.
You're welcome.
Are we going to meet in person or virtually?
Well, let's wait till we see what's happening with the next, wait a minute, it was which one did you, September 1st, did you say, Melissa? In your email to me, did you say September 1st might be in person? You're muted.
You're muted.
Yes, I mentioned September 1st in our email. I'm trying to poll members to get a sense of,
Can we wait and see what happens on the September 1st thing before we decide about the 17th?
sure.
Do we have a trend among the ones you've talked to as to their preference for this first?
I've not heard from everyone, so I
Okay,
would have to say there's no clear majority of,
okay.
so, yeah.
We'll just leave it open until we hear back and we make a plan for the first. Then if we're changing for the first, maybe we'll change for,
I just got policy at 1 PM on the 17th then, okay.
How
Okay.
long are we going to meet for that day? Just an hour?
think an hour would do that. I don't know how much discussion, but we're getting embroiled in a discussion just with a policy I didn't think there was gonna be anything about. So how about an
You
hour,
know what's in it, you know there's going to be a conversation.
how
right.
about an hour and a half?
Okay.
I'm good with that. I'm good with that.
We ought to know there's going to be conversations that took us like an hour to approve the agenda, so.
That's
Oh.
true, Stan, that is true.
Well, thank you all. I know you've got places to get to, so
All
bye-bye.
right.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank
Have a
you
great
all.
day.
Everybody,
All right, see y'all, bye.
bye.
So are you gonna call me?